So, the night my son introduced me to his business partners as the housekeeper who's been with the family for years, I just smiled, poured the wine, didn't say a word. What none of them knew was that I'd signed the deed to that house, the house we were all standing in, about 11 hours earlier. And by the time dessert came out, it wasn't going to be his house anymore. Hi, everyone. I'm Diane. I'm 63, and before I get into what happened in that dining room, I'd love to know where you're watching from tonight. Go ahead. Drop your city, your country, whatever, in the comments. I really do read all of them. It's kind of become my favorite part of the day. Okay. This happened about 4 months ago, and I'll be honest with you. My hands still shake a little just thinking about it. I guess it's a story about the day I stopped being invisible in my own family. Get comfortable. This one takes a little while to tell properly, and I don't want to rush it. Okay, so some background first, because I don't think this story makes much sense without it. I lost my husband, Tom, 11 years ago. Heart attack. Completely out of nowhere. One Tuesday, he was fine, cracking jokes over breakfast, and by Thursday, I was picking out a casket. 11 years, and I still sometimes reach for the phone to tell him something funny before I remember. We'd run a small hardware store together for almost 30 years. Nothing fancy, just a good local shop, the kind where people knew your name and you knew theirs. After he passed, I kept it running for a while, mostly because I didn't know who I was without it. And then I quietly sold it. Used some of that money, and honestly, a good chunk of my own savings, to help our son Marcus through college. He never actually knew how much. I didn't want him carrying that. I wanted him to just focus on becoming who he was going to become. 3 years ago, Marcus asked if I'd move in with him and his wife Elena to help with the kids, he said. And I was happy about it. Genuinely, I want that on the record. I pictured family dinners, being useful, being around, being part of something, instead of rattling around an empty house by myself. What I didn't picture was slowly turning into staff. It's funny. It doesn't happen all at once. Nobody sits you down and tells you, hey, you're the help now. It's smaller than that. It's being asked to eat in the kitchen when real guests come over. Just this once, just tonight. We'll do it properly next time. It's your name quietly missing off the family Christmas card, 2 years running. I actually didn't notice the first year. My sister Carol pointed it out to me, very gently, over the phone. Diane, she said, did you see whose names were on that card? I hadn't even looked that closely. I do now. One Thanksgiving, I actually got seated at the kids' table, by accident, Elena said, laughing it off. We just ran out of room at the big table, while her own mother had a proper seat at the head with everyone else. I laughed too. Of course I did. I passed the cranberry sauce down to a booster seat and made a joke about needing my reading glasses for the kids' menu. It's little things with the grandkids, too, that took me longer to clock than they should have. Elena's mother is Grandma Rose. I somehow, without anyone ever deciding it out loud, became just Diane. I remember my youngest granddaughter, maybe 4 at the time, asking me very seriously why I didn't have a grandma name like Grandma Rose did. I told her I was still deciding on mine. I went into the bathroom after that and just sat on the edge of the tub for a minute. Then I came back out and helped her with her puzzle. It's Elena introducing me to new neighbors as our nanny, and me standing there deciding, in about half a second, whether correcting her is worth the awkward silence that would follow. It never felt worth it, so I just let it go. Every single time. I told myself I was being gracious. Looking back, I think I was just scared that if I made noise about it, I'd find out nobody would fight to keep me around anyway. There's one dinner I keep coming back to, maybe 6 months before everything I'm about to tell you. Marcus had a new business partner over, Richard. Nice enough guy, easy laugh, the kind of person who remembers to ask how your knee's doing. At some point, Richard turns to me, pretty politely, and asks what I do, what I did before all this. And before I can even answer, Marcus just, "Oh, she doesn't really do much. She just helps out around the house." I was holding a serving dish at the time. I remember that specifically. Don't ask me why. The mind holds on to strange little details. I just stood there holding it, smiled, and said nothing. Set it down on the table like everything was perfectly normal. But something in me, I don't really know how else to put it, something just quietly closed that night. I didn't cry, didn't say a word to him after everyone left, helped Elena clear the table like always. I just noted it, filed it away somewhere I didn't even know I was keeping files. Carol called me the next week just to check in, the way she does, and I remember starting to tell her about the dinner and stopping myself halfway through saying, "It's fine, honestly, it's not a big deal." She got quiet on the other end for a second and said, "Diane, you say that about everything lately." I didn't have a good answer for that. I still don't really, except that it was easier than the alternative. I think part of me still believed that if I was patient enough, if I just kept showing up, cooking the Sunday dinners, doing the school pickups, remembering everyone's allergies and appointments, somebody would eventually notice all of it and say thank you. Really mean it. That's the trap, isn't it? You keep waiting to be seen instead of just deciding to matter anyway, on your own terms, whether anyone claps for it or not. So, about a week after that dinner, I got a call from Frank. He'd been Tom's accountant for years, mine too now, sweet man. Must be pushing 75 by this point. Still answers his own phone. Still calls me kiddo, even though I'm pushing 64 myself. And he tells me that this little industrial lot Tom and I bought back in 1994, 40 minutes outside the city, out past the old rail line. I'd honestly half forgotten we still owned the thing. A logistics company wants to buy it. For some kind of regional distribution hub, apparently. I remember exactly why we bought that lot, actually. Tom had this whole plan about expanding the hardware business into wholesale supply. Nothing ever came of it. We just let the land sit there, collecting weeds and property tax bills for 30 years. And the number Frank gives me for it now? I actually had to ask him to say it again, slower. It was enough. Genuinely, actually enough to change things. I remember exactly where I was standing when it really landed. At the kitchen sink, doing dishes nobody had thanked me for in about 3 years, hands in soapy water, just thinking, I have resources nobody in this house knows about. I have options nobody thinks I have. That's a strange feeling, by the way. Realizing you've been quietly underestimating your own life right alongside everyone else who's been doing it to you. Now, around this same time, and I promise this connects, Marcus and Elena had gotten themselves pretty overextended. New car, a kitchen renovation they didn't really need, the kids' school fees creeping up every year. They'd taken out a fairly large loan against the house. Their house, they called it, always. Except, and Marcus genuinely did not remember this, or maybe just chose not to. I'd helped with the down payment years back, quietly, and I'd had it written up properly at the time, through my own lawyer even then. Not out of suspicion, just a good habit, I suppose, from 30 years of running a business with Tom. You always, always get it in writing. Tom used to say a handshake is worth exactly as much as the paper you're willing to put behind it. Elena started making these little comments, too, around then, about needing more space eventually, once the baby who wasn't even born yet arrived, about things changing once Diane's situation changes, which, I want to be clear, is a very polite way of saying once we figure out how to get her a smaller room or out entirely, while still absolutely expecting me to do school pickup 3 days a week and handle the pediatrician appointments because you're just so much calmer with the kids than I am, Diane. I actually overheard part of that exact conversation from the hallway. Holding a laundry basket of all things hip against the doorframe, not even trying to eavesdrop, it just happened. People don't always say the cruel thing to your face. They just leave it sitting there for you to trip over on your own, later, alone. There was one more moment right around then that I think of as the actual last straw, even more than the housekeeper comment. I'd quietly paid for half of a family trip to the coast, didn't make a thing of it, just transferred the money to Marcus and said, "Put this toward the summer trip, my treat." And at dinner with his in-laws, I heard him say, clear as day, "Yeah, we really wanted to give the kids a proper vacation this year, so we made it work." Made it work. I sat right there and said nothing. Again. That was the week I finally called Frank back and told him yes, sell the property. And I called my lawyer, too, Ms. Alvarez, a sharp, kind woman I'd worked with a little after Tom passed, handling the estate. I remember sitting in her office, this small, tidy room with a plant that clearly wasn't fake because it actually looked half dead, and just laying it all out for her. The loan, the lien from years back that I'd never bothered to formally close out. The house. She listened for a long time without saying much, and then she said, "Diane, do you understand that you may already own a meaningful stake in that property, whether anyone in that house realizes it or not?" I said I didn't, not really. She said, "Well, let's find out exactly what you own." So I didn't explode. I want to be honest with you. There wasn't some big dramatic moment where I slammed a table or gave a speech. I just went quiet. The kind of quiet where you're actually doing something, not the kind where you're just hurt and stewing. I sold the property, cleanly, for a very fair number, and then, without telling a single soul in that house, I used part of it to buy out the rest of the lien on the family home, early, formally, with every document Ms. Alvarez said I'd need. Which meant my little forgotten technicality from years ago quietly became full, documented, legal ownership of 51% of that property. And then I just kept going. Kept working in the garden, kept making Sunday dinner, kept doing the pickups, kept being exactly who they thought I was. Nobody noticed a single thing had changed. I remember thinking, almost amused by it, that I'd never been better at being invisible than I was in those few weeks. Except now, it was on purpose. So I planned a dinner. Marcus and Elena assumed it was them finally doing something nice for me. A birthday thing. A bit late, but still, better late than never, Elena said, hugging me like it was her idea. And look, I let them believe that, because in a way, it was true. I did want it to be a kind of celebration, just maybe not the one they were picturing. I invited Frank, who I think enjoyed this more than anyone, honestly. He kept calling it the reveal, like we were on some kind of game show. I invited Miss Alvarez, who agreed to come partly as a favor and partly, I suspect, because she wanted to see it play out with her own eyes. And I'll admit this part felt a little pointed even to me. I invited Richard, Marcus's business partner, the one from that dinner, the serving dish, all of it. Turns out his company had recently mentioned, informally over drinks with Marcus, wanting to buy into a share of the property for some kind of satellite office down the line. He had no idea what he was walking into. Neither did Marcus. The night before, I sat out in the garden for a long time after everyone was asleep, just thinking, the way you do before something you can't take back. I called Carol, actually, around 10 at night, and she just listened while I talked myself in circles. "Am I being cruel?" I asked her, and she said, "Diane, you have spent 3 years being furniture in that house. Setting the table straight is not cruelty." I sat with that for a while. I want to say something here, because I think it matters, and I've thought about it a lot since. This wasn't about revenge, not really. Not in the way people usually mean that word when they hear a title like this one. There wasn't glee in it for me, not even that night, sitting in the dark with my tea going cold. It was more just clarity, the quiet kind. I'd simply stopped waiting to be noticed and started making sure the paperwork finally matched the truth of things, which, when you think about it, is really all I'd ever wanted anyone to do for me in the first place. So, we're at dinner. Nice table, the good dishes out, wine poured, kids upstairs with a movie on because it was getting late. Everyone's relaxed, and at some point Marcus, out of pure habit, I honestly don't think he even thought about it, it just came out of him the way it always did, makes the housekeeper joke again. In front of Richard. Same old line, word for word almost. And this time, Ms. Alvarez, very calmly, very professionally, sets down her fork and just says, "Actually, since we're all here, I should mention, Diane owns 51% of this property, effective as of last month." Silence. Actual, physical silence. The kind you can hear the refrigerator hum through. Elena's fork just stops, halfway to her mouth. Marcus laughs first, this short, confused laugh, genuinely thinks it's some kind of mix-up, a joke he's not quite getting, until Ms. Alvarez calmly slides a folder across the table toward him. I watched his face change, slowly, in stages. And I'll be honest, some small part of me had wondered for years what that would look like. Shock first, real shock, the kind that doesn't know where to land. Then something angrier, his voice rising. "What is this, Mom? What did you do?" Then, and this is the part I almost felt for him, I really did. Actual panic. When Miss Alvarez very gently explained that the loan he and Elena had taken out against their house was now legally tangled up with his own mother's majority stake in it, and any refinancing, any decision about that property needed my signature too going forward. Elena tried to backpedal almost immediately. "We didn't mean it like that, Diane. You know we—" And I remember just looking at her, not unkindly, just steadily, until she stopped talking on her own. Richard went very quiet, very still, visibly doing the math in real time on the fact that the woman he'd been told a year ago doesn't really do much, now happened to be the exact person whose signature his own expansion deal actually needed. I think he genuinely didn't know where to look. I didn't yell. I want to be really clear about that, because I think it's the whole point of this entire story. I just said one thing, quietly, into the silence, not looking away from Marcus. "I didn't do this to punish you, Marcus. I did this because I finally remembered I'm allowed to matter in my own life, too." Nobody said anything for a long moment after that. Frank, bless him, eventually broke the silence by asking if anyone wanted more wine, which somehow made two people laugh despite everything, including, eventually, me. It wasn't some instant fairy tale after that, if that's what you're picturing. Marcus didn't fall to his knees and apologize for 3 years of small cruelties in one tidy speech. Elena didn't become a different person overnight. What actually happened over the following weeks was smaller than that, and honestly, more real. Marcus had to actually sit down with me and Ms. Alvarez more than once and negotiate, as an equal, for the first time in his adult life. About the house, about the loan, about what came next for all of us. Elena's attitude shifted too. At first, purely out of necessity, I'll be honest about that. I'm not going to pretend it was pure sincerity from day one. But slowly, over about 2 months, I started noticing these small cracks of something that looked like actual respect. She asked my opinion on something to do with the kids' school last week, and actually waited for the answer instead of just nodding along. Small thing, meant more than it should have, probably. I didn't throw them out, didn't need to, and honestly didn't want to. They're still my family. I just stopped being furniture. I took a little apartment about 15 minutes away with my share from the sale. First place that's been entirely mine since Tom passed. I see the grandkids on my own terms now, which, funny enough, makes me enjoy them more, not less. I pick the days, I pick the activities, and somehow I have more patience for it than I did when it was just expected of me. And for the first time in years, I get to decorate a space that's entirely, unapologetically mine. Yellow curtains in the kitchen. Tom would have hated the yellow curtains, honestly. And that's exactly why I bought them. If you're watching this, and any part of it sounds familiar, maybe you're the mother who's been made to feel like a burden. Or maybe, and I say this gently, you're the daughter or son who's been a little too busy to really see your own parent as a whole person with a whole life behind them. I just hope you take something from this. We're all capable of more than people give us credit for, at any age, and it's genuinely never too late to remember, you're allowed to matter too. If this one got to you at all, do me a favor and hit that like button. It actually helps this channel more than you'd think. And I'd love to know in the comments, has anyone in your life ever underestimated you like that? Share this with somebody who needs to hear it today. And stick around, subscribe. I've got more of these stories coming. And I read every comment, so don't be shy. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. Until next time, take care of yourselves. And remember, you're stronger than you know.